Chris, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. First, can you kind of tell me how you got involved with Lyle and Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Ryan. So I am into my third year at Lyle and Scott now. So I joined the team at Lyle as a product developer. So my background is in engineering. That's where my qualifications lie. And I specialised in specifically sports equipment design and golf within that. So before I joined Lyle and Scott, I was designing golf hardware, so clubs and equipment, and some apparel as part of that role. But I joined Lyle and Scott as a product developer for the golf and sportswear divisions. So yeah, as we were embarking at that time on growing both of those sides of the business, golf and sportswear, and they wanted some specific members of staff to look over development of product in those areas. I did that for about 18 months, and then I moved into the sales side for the golf business. Did that for about 6 months, and then was asked to join the board of directors at Lyle and Scott to look after the product and sourcing team, the supply chain, basically from the point of product development right through to delivering it into our warehouses, which over the course of a pandemic has been a fun and exciting ride. It's kept me on my toes. And then in March of this year, the opportunity came up to head up the golf division within Lyle and Scott itself, and that's a dream job for me. So I jumped at that chance, and that's how I find myself here today with you.
So what made the decision for you to jump from kind of hard goods to soft goods? And for anyone who's never been in the golf world, what are kind of the key differences between designing for one for the other?
Yeah, I mean, so I was working previously for a British hardware manufacturer. There aren't really very many of those. So I was working for one called Ben Ross, who was a small family-owned company. They'd been making equipment for about 20 years. They did a good job of it. But you're competing against just Goliaths of the game, right? And that is a really close shot. People like Ping have amazing retention rates in their development teams because the jobs don't exist. There's loads of people that want to do them. So the opportunity for development within hardware and progression, particularly in the UK, was virtually zero. So it would have meant a relocation to the US if you could get into in the position of getting one of those positions in a hardware development team, which were just, so sought after. I've always been interested and passionate about fashion and golf fashion, particularly with the movement that I was seeing at that time, a real change in the way that people were dressing. We kind of moved from the 90s and that classic sartorial looking through a more technical stage, and we might be moving back towards that more classical way of dressing now. And I've always been interested in following that. So the opportunity to work with a fashion brand in golf, and one that had been in golf in such a big way as Lyle and Scott has, was just a great opportunity. That's why I made that decision to move across.
It sounds like you're sensing the same thing that maybe I've sensed, that we went from a certain way of dressing in the 80s, 90s to maybe going the complete opposite in the 2000s and even 2010s, and recognizing maybe that wasn't good either, and trying to kind of take performance fabric to make it look like something you would wear anywhere other than playing golf. Is that where you see things now in the apparel world?
Yeah, I think we're at a really interesting time where there is more diversity in golf than there ever has been, from the types of people playing it, but also from what they're being offered. So you can go and wear your technical fabrications, and there are people doing amazing jobs of making those, more brands than there ever has been. But there are different options now. If you want golf lifestyle product, it's there. If you want really fashion forward stuff, it's there too. So I think we're living in a world now where there's not one specific way of dressing for golf, which is great. Like you have more options to express yourself with the way that you dress on the golf course now, and you're not being prescribed that 10 years ago everything had to be a shiny polyester polo shirt and technical pants, which was fine at the time, I'm sure. But it's nice that people have a choice now with the existing brands doing either what they did really well and keep doing that, or perhaps changing their direction, and a whole dearth of new brands coming in, which is amazing. It's a really exciting space to be in at the minute in golf fashion.
And it feels like material has come around from a blend of both, where you can have something that is highly technical but doesn't look the part whatsoever.
And that's kind of the sweet spot we try and hit, really. So we're primarily a fashion and lifestyle brand now. So if we came out with product that was purely technical, you sell it and buy it because of its specifications or its spec sheet, That's not what we'd be about. So we bring in all of the elements from our lifestyle collections. We underpin it with the technicality that will keep you comfortable on the golf course, that will mean, you know, you're going to feel the right temperature when you should do, and you're not going to feel sticky and horrible if it's hot, or, you know, freezing if it's cold outside. But you're also not then going to feel silly if you wear your stuff you're wearing on the golf course to dinner afterwards, or you have to stop and get gas on the way home. You're not going to be like, oh, I'm in my golf uniform, I feel a bit of an idiot. Like, we make clothes for people who see golf as a lifestyle rather than purely as a performance activity.
For you, is there any kind of restriction or encumbrance of having to try to manage a century-and-a-half-old brand while to also stay current?
I think that's a really pertinent point. And we make the distinction at Lyle, in golf, in sports, in our fashion side, that we don't try and make cool product. We see that as dangerous. Cool is of a moment, it moves, it changes. And if you get it right, you might fly for a little while. But unless you can constantly predict what's going to be cool at a particular point in time, at some point you're going to find yourself in difficulty. So the distinction that we make is we try and make relevant products. So some of our styles in golf haven't changed since the first time we made them in the 70s. We still make an iconic V-neck sweater, a quarter zip jumper, distinctive knitwear patterns. Those things absolutely haven't changed because they've always been relevant in golf. We tie that in, and it's particularly important at the moment where golf styling it's a bit more backwards looking. So there are eras in time now that are kind of becoming relevant again, and people, you know, fashion repeats itself so frequently, and the cycle just goes around, and what was cool 50 years ago, you know, is on trend now. And the benefit that we have is we existed at those times in the past. So we have a physical archive up in Scotland of product, lookbooks, designer sketches, the instructions that operated the machines. So we can go and reference those things. So at the moment, we're seeing real trends from the late 70s. So we can go and look at the knitwear patterns that we used in the 70s, reinvent them now, maybe in a technical fabrication, maybe we do it as an all-over print, maybe do it as a yarn-dyed stripe. We can take what has gone in the past to inspire what we're doing today. And that's the balance that we have to strike. But the benefit is we have the reference of all of that past material to go from.
So do you kind of think that your customer is maybe acutely, at least decently aware of the history of Lyle and Scott, and also maybe somewhat of the history of fashion, or are they just kind of like most people that they see something, they think it's cool, and they purchase it?
We have a real mix. So we did a piece of customer analysis, piece of research from an analytics firm to try and work out exactly who our customer is. And they were quite surprised that the result of that showed that we genuinely have a customer from 16 right through to 60 years old. So that's a unique opportunity in that we've got a huge group of people who buy our clothes. It's a challenge in that we need to make something that's relevant for each age within that. But for golf specifically, it means that we have people at the older end of that age group who remember Lyle from our heyday in golf, the late 70s right through the 80s. We won the Open Championship 3 times in that period of time. We were worn by the best players on the planet in that period. So they're aware of what we did, and they'll have an association with the type of products that we make, the knitwear, those kind of real classic pieces. We've got a group in the middle that might have a recollection of that, but have kind of really seen us grow as a fashion brand and might kind of transfer their knowledge if they've come into golf, or they've always been in golf and they see Lyle growing as a fashion brand, they pick us up that way. And then we've got a group of people right at the other end of that age group that need to be educated on the brand as a whole. They've never heard of us. We need to come and tell them who we are. We did golf before, we're doing golf now, we're a fashion brand, all of those things. And we do that with some different products, like the collaborations that we do with other kind of cooler, edgier brands. That helps us do that. So we've got a real mix of customers and different knowledge levels, which, yeah, certainly keeps us on our toes.
And do you find that maybe some of those older customers will kind of dip their toe into stuff maybe that's a little too new for them? Are they a little experimental, or do they kind of stick to the classics? We're at the point where, so we're really growing our golf range at the moment. So we kind of, until recently, we only really gave people the classics. Mm-hmm. So we had our absolute best sellers, and they were our best sellers because they're really good products and they're popular, but they're also kind of the only things that we sold.
So we're bringing in some more kind of edgy experimental products. So, I mean, I can't believe it's still controversial, but things like a hoodie on a golf course, God forbid, like a hood on a sweatshirt. The world still turns, everyone keeps breathing. But we're seeing those products rapidly become some of our most popular. So these things that we bring in as kind of edgy experimental products are rapidly being adopted into the mainstream, which is great. Like we had to push ourselves that what we thought was edgy and experimental in golf, and it might have been a couple of years ago, now is really common and accepted. And we need to keep being more experimental. It actually means we can look almost further back in the archive when like people were mad designing products in like the 50s and the 60s, and the patterns they had, the silhouettes were amazing. And 5 years ago, we would have never have dreamed of putting them in a range. But nowadays, we think they do all right. And actually, with the ranges we have coming out in the second half of next year, we've got some real archive-inspired products that would have been miles away from what we would have done a couple of years ago. But now we think will be some of our best-selling products. It's a really cool time to be doing it.
Is finding the edge now of fashion going back farther, or is it trying to find out something that just hasn't been, I guess, accepted as commonplace, particularly in golf? I mean, where is that fine line between moving forward and looking back?
I think some of it is about being confident in who you are as a brand. I think if you know the customer you have, the type of product you want to make, you can take the reference from either trying to predict what something is coming next or looking back to find inspiration. I think if you are searching for what you are as a brand and you're trying to find something that will make you cool, that's when it becomes more difficult. We know the kind of products that we make, and I think it's almost more important that we know the types of products we don't make. So we don't make super technical like waterproofs and that really technical outerwear. That's not what our brand does. And there's some amazing specialist brands that do that. And we're going to kind of leave them to it with a recognition that we're good at what we do, they're good at what they do. And that gives us the confidence in the products that we're making. They are the right things at the right time.
Is there a boost or a help in that so many younger folks now who are into golf are willing to go outside of maybe the 4 or 5 classic brands that maybe people think of immediately, and are willing to go down different directions to suit their individual taste?
I think people want to be different. You don't want to turn up at a golf. You might be an amazingly like unique dresser in your off-course life, and then for a period of time you turned up at the golf course and there's a good chance someone's wearing the same polo shirt as you. If you're shopping at the same place in the same town, there's only a finite number of brands and options. And I think people want to turn up and express themselves a bit more individually than maybe we have in the past. And there's definitely an acceptance of new brands, or just looking outside of those 4 or 5, as you say, that they're not the only people now. It's hugely encouraging. And every time I open Instagram, there's a new brand that wants to come into golf, and I wish them all the success, because the more brands that we have coming in, it's going to be more exciting. The more people come into the game and go, yeah, I want to dress like that. That feels exciting to me. The more likely they are that they're going to stay. But I think the same is in the US, but in the UK, we have had a huge explosion in golf. Our number of participants between 2019 and 2021 has doubled, more than doubled actually. And if we have clothes that make them feel included, excited about playing golf, they're going to stick around. If they feel like they have to go and dress like this version of golf they have in their mind in the same polo shirt and the same pair of pants, it's not going to be exciting for them and they're not going to stay. So I think it's a great time that people are looking outside of those kind of mainstream brands.
That's a really interesting thing. I mean, I know we talked about the controversy around hoodies for whatever reason being controversial, but fashion as inclusion is a really interesting idea to me, that you can present to people that you can be who you want to be on the golf course. And I haven't thought of it that way. Is that something just specialized toward new golfers or returning golfers, maybe through the pandemic, or is that every golfer?
Yes. So I was saying that all these new people coming either back into golf or into golf for the first time challenge the status quo and say, why do I have to look the same as everybody? I want to dress like me. My friends are a really good example. So lots of them took up playing golf over the course of the pandemic, and they're quite cool dressers in their personal lives. And then for some reason, they all turn up at the golf course and they all look like a typical golfer. I'm like, what is happening? Why? You know, there are other brands. And in some instances, they didn't know that these other brands exist. They go to a particular golf shop and they buy what's on offer to them and actually go, look, you can look at this website, look at all these brands that sell golf products. And then a year later, they're all dressing like themselves again, but a version on the golf course. So there is definitely an education. I think people come into golf for the first time and they go, there's almost a pressure that they arrive at a golf course, I have to dress like a golfer. And it's almost once you get over that that introductory period, you start to feel like a golfer, you belong on a golf course, you get over that initial nervousness, you can go, well, actually, I can dress however I want.
Yeah.
And there is more and more acceptance of that. There's obviously still dress codes in places at some places, which are a source of great frustration for me, but particularly in the UK, they are relaxing all the time. There's an acceptance that if you allow people, God forbid, to wear, you know, not a collared shirt on the golf course, the world still turns, and they might come back a second time and a third time and feel like that's a place they want to spend their time and their money. Like it is a growing acceptance here, particularly here in the UK and Europe, which is great.
At the end of the day, I feel like golf participation's future kind of relies on being able to give people who have so many options with what they want to do with their time, something that makes them feel comfortable and makes them feel happy. So what is ultimately Golf Fashion's contribution to that? What is Lyle and Scott's attempted contribution to that, of making people feel a sense of enjoyment on the golf course and want to keep doing it?
Definitely. We have an ethos that runs across all areas of our business, that we want to make clothes that make people feel like the best version of themselves. So whether that's on the high street, in the pub, or on the golf course, they put our clothes on, they wear the eagle, and they feel like the best version of themselves. And we want to do that, particularly with our golf range, for everybody that steps on a golf course. So whether you are kind of that classic conservative guy, whether you are the streetwear rebellious guy, whether you're the sportswear more technical guy, we've got something for all of you. And you put our products on, you wear our eagle, and it makes you feel like the best version of you. You're not trying to be anybody else. You're not adopting somebody else's uniform. It's you. It's the best version of you. That's all we try and do.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for spending time with us. Really appreciate it. Great to connect with you. Hopefully we can do it again soon. And thanks so much.
A real pleasure. Thanks for having me, Ryan.